Hi everyone, welcome to the MrpTech Podcast. This is episode 140. My name is Matt, and this is the weekly podcast discussing everyday tech for everyday people. Thanks for joining in again this week. I have a lot to talk about this week, a lot of different topics, and I want to get into Deepin Linux a little bit later on in the podcast. From the start of today's show, I want to start on a bit of a somber note, and to tell a little bit of a story about myself. One of the things that I think about quite often is something that I was told when I was much younger, and that was to be truly happy with yourself is one of the things that you can do is help somebody who you don't even know. And I've lived by this philosophy for a really long time. When I first started teaching in 2005, we took a bunch of students to Biloxi, Mississippi to help rebuild after Hurricane Katrina. We helped rebuild a town, basically, several different houses. And I remember going into a 89-year-old woman's house and basically putting in a new floorboard through her entire house for her. I never met this woman, never knew her. I had heard her name at one point in time, but never knew who it was, and never did end up meeting them after we left. But I felt really good about myself for doing something like that. I want to tell you about a fundraising campaign right now for another host on the Podnuts network. Now, I have never met Eric Arduini at all. I don't believe we've ever spoken, but Eric has been a huge part of the Podnuts network, and he and his family are undergoing a very hard time right now with family health issues. And the Door-to-Door Geek has posted on the Podnuts pages and like the Podnuts Facebook page and basically everywhere I would imagine that you can post this link, a link to support the Eric Arduini family. And I hope that some of my listeners out there would consider making a donation to help him and his family out. Eric is undergoing some serious health issues right now. And if you don't know who he is, he has hosted many shows on the Podnuts network. I'm going to put a link in the show notes myself. I have also given a donation to help Eric and his family out. Encourage all of you to do that as well for this family in their time of need. All right. So a couple of things to talk about first in this episode. If you missed the last episode, we have started a Podnuts Linux user group on my Discord chat server. And over the last week, a whole bunch of new faces have joined. So thanks everybody for popping in. And the Discord room has become very active, and I'm excited to talk about all of that. And I'm excited to have all of the new people, the new faces, the new personalities in the room. It has been a whole lot of fun this week in particular. Now, on top of this Linux users group, which is meant to basically talk any type of tech, not just Linux, but you can talk any type of technology topics, Raspberry Pis, laptops, smartphones, whatever you want to talk about, because there are a lot of smart people in the room who may have some great answers for you. And it's not uncommon for people like Larry Bushy from the Going Linux podcast or Nightwise from nightwise.com to pop in and say hello. We enjoy having them here very much. And so I want to give them a shout out for popping in to our lug and talking tech with us this past week. Now, on top of the new Linux user group, I was trying to think of another way that we could make Discord even more active. And one of my favorite things to talk about is audiobooks. So sort of as an experiment, if you are a listener and you really enjoy audiobooks, maybe you have an Audible account, maybe you get your audiobooks from a local library, maybe you have other apps that you use for audiobooks. What I would like to do is sort of start an audiobook club. So I've created a audiobook text chat in my Discord room, and anybody interested in audiobooks, I'd like to invite you to come on over to our Discord room, talk about your favorite books, what you like about them, what you didn't like about them, because I'm always interested. I'm always looking for new audiobooks to listen to. And I've actually gone through quite a few this week and in the last month or so as well. this week I actually got to start listening to a book that I've been looking forward to listening to for years and years and just never have gotten to it. It's basically a prequel story to The Lord of the Rings called The Children of Hurin. And honestly, got to say, I didn't really enjoy the book that much. There was a lot of very difficult names to follow, a lot of difficult places to follow. But that was the first book that I posted in the audiobook chat itself. I'm on to, after I finished that, I went on to reading Neil deGrasse Tyson's Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It's a very short book. It's only about 3.5 hours, I believe, and I finished it within a day and a half and really thoroughly enjoyed that book. So I sort of recovered from the difficult read of The Children of Hurin. So if you're interested in audiobooks, I'd love to talk audiobooks with a bunch of different people. Come on into our Discord room. The link is in the show notes, and we'd love to have you there, and also any other of the chat rooms that we have set up there. Okay, so on to the next thing. I am deep in the process of a project with our students here at school, and that process has taken well over a year. And if I'm going to give you a small update today on our student tech club contacting the International Space Station through the ARIS project. Now, it's amateur radio over the International Space Station. We have put in paperwork last March, and at this point, we were all accepted. We were one of 7 schools in the country to contact the International Space Station through this program. We were very proud of that, and we were originally scheduled for our contact to be the first week of April. Now, due to the schedule on the space station and a few other sort of housekeeping things, the schedule has been pushed back to the first week of May. I believe it's May 6th through May 10th. They will let us know about a week before when that contact will be. Due to variations of the orbit of the space station, they won't know exactly when it'll be flying over our school during that contact until about a week before. So we are getting ready for this, and we're going to live stream the event on this channel. And what we're going to do in the meantime, the students have about 10 minutes of contact time as the space station flies overhead. So they will get a chance to ask about 20 questions to one astronaut aboard the International Space Station. And we originally were going to do it over our school's amateur radio station, and it would have been very sort of easy for us to do that. We needed a couple of things like an antenna rotor and satellite tracking software just to be on the safe side. Well, we ended up going through the ARRL to get the antenna rotor and a few other things that we needed, and we weren't super confident that everything was going to work as well as it should have, and we want this to be a success for the students. So what we decided to do instead was a telebridge contact, which is basically the students at the school will be calling a substation, which will then relay the information to the space station over radio. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to host a huge event at the school in our auditorium. We're going to have all the students in the school there. We're going to live stream the event. We're using OBS, using as much open source software as we can. And we've been sort of working out the bugs of this. As far as OBS goes, I'm really good with OBS, and so I don't have any issues there. The problem comes in with our way to get the phone system into our PA system, into our auditorium, and to be able to contact with the astronauts. So the ARIS project actually sent me a box. It's a JK Audio Innkeeper PBX. It's a very small box, and I looked at the price, and it's like $500. But this box does a whole lot. And basically, here's what you do. On the back side, there is a spot that you're actually going to plug the handset of your phone in. And then on the back side, there's actually another spot to push a cable in that's going to go to the actual phone that has the dialing keys. So the PBX, the Innkeeper PBX, sort of is in between the handset and the actual dialer portion of the phone. And Also on the back, there is an XLR output so that you can output the signal to a mixer. You can also hook up a microphone as well. And it gives you a couple of outs, a couple of sends, like stereo out. It also gives you an opportunity to cycle through an A, B, and C selector that will allow for different types of phones. So we get this all set up, and I'm pretty good with setting up sound equipment. I do it on a fairly regular basis. And so I read the instructions very clearly, and I set it up exactly how it's supposed to be. Basically, from the mixer itself, there is an aux send that connects to the Innkeeper, and you can get audio from the caller or from the person on the phone in the room with you to go through a PA system. And when you first make a phone call, you have to toggle this button that says handset. So you lift up the phone and you can hear the dial tone in handset mode. You dial the phone number, and when the other person picks up, then you speak with them over the phone. And when you're ready to put it over the PA system, you hit the broadcast button. And at that point, the handset becomes muted and the microphone is activated. Now, when I hit the broadcast button, the caller on the phone is heard nice and clearly over the PA system, and I can be heard over the PA system talking on the microphone. The problem is they can't hear what I say, and that's not supposed to be the case. So we have been working on this for 3 weeks, and really we've eliminated a lot of process. I've tried 3 different mixers, and we have, through process of elimination, it's either one of 3 things. It could be the phone that we're using is incompatible with this device, which is probably the most likely case. So we've ordered some extra phones on Amazon to try it out and see if other phones might work. It could be the unit itself, the JK Audio Innkeeper PBX. It could just not be working correctly, in which case we do have a backup box that could be overnighted to us. So that might be the issue. Or it could be the school's phone system for some reason not allowing this to happen. I really hope that's not the case. So I'm going to lean on the side that it's actually going to be the issue with the phone. And hopefully we can get this all cleared up within the next week or so, just to kind of have the stress out of the way, all the bugs worked out. And hopefully it'll be up and running. And then I'm going to do a live stream test and we'll be ready to roll. Students are submitting their releases they have to get a form signed for NASA so that they can be, their audio and video can be used for NASA events and stuff like that. So students are submitting their forms now. So it's going to be a fun couple of weeks here at the school, and I'm going to share as much as I can with that over on this over the podcast and my YouTube channel as well. So just an update on that. The contact will be the first week of May 6th through 10th. At some point in time, I'll put out information as soon as I have it on when exactly that will be. I'll put a link up for the live stream and such as time goes on. So the best way I think would be using Discord and posting links and stuff there. You can also check out my website, mrptechreviews.com, and I'll try to post any information there as well. All right. So with the new Podnuts lug that we've been working on this past week, one of the things that I did is we originally were going to start with Midnight BSD. And I was actually looking quite forward to trying out BSD again. It's been a long time since we tried it out. And that was the first sort of post that we put in the log, was for everybody to go try Midnight BSD. Well, we all downloaded it, and I'm not sure one person got we were all able to install Midnight BSD, but I'm not sure one person was able to set up a desktop environment. We all tried to install it, and we all ran into the same issue that the packages weren't available in the repo, and all this, we couldn't download any of the software. And I was doing some research on the Midnight BSD forums. Several other people had similar issues, and we basically just moved on from it, and we may cycle back in a few weeks or months and try it again, see how it works. But in the meantime, we moved on, and I actually gave Morton a chance in the Discord room to pick a distro, and he came up with a good one, and he chose Deepin Linux. He wanted us to take a look at that one, and Depin is something that I have wanted to take a look at for a really long time. I never have because I had some concerns with it. Now, I'm just gonna state what those concerns are, and then I'll talk about a little bit about them and our experiences with them over the last week or so. So, Deepin Linux is a Linux distribution that hails from China. It's made from Chinese developers, and over the last few weeks and months, I should say over the last several years, there's always been concerns popping up that Deepin Linux has some security issues, and it has. Well, let me just say there are issues that have stopped many people from using it. With this, what I wanted to say is all of the users that have tried it over the last few days, we all had our different opinions on that security issue. And some of us were more apt to try Deepin in, say, like a virtual machine. Others were less likely to try it. Now, the first thing that happened when I wanted to download Deepin is I noticed that the download was very slow. And I had a feeling that it was downloading directly from China and I mean, really slow. I started a download at 7 p.m. and it was still downloading at 11:30 that night, and it just was not rolling around. I was going to try some other mirrors, but I never really got around to it that night. And as we were doing this in the lug, several of the other users, and I won't mention their names because I didn't ask them if I could bring this up on the show, but several of them also, when they tried to download it, they got a security warning from Google saying that there may be issues with this download. And it was actually, when you download something, you get the keep button and the discard button. Well, the keep button was not even visible, and it was just a discard button. So that was a little unnerving at first when we were starting this process, and I almost decided to back out entirely, but due to the slow downloads and these security issues that were popping up. But we kept at it, and after a couple of days, I was able to find a different mirror that would work, and I believe I found it on SourceForge, and we all did the MD5 sum, and we all got the same results. So that was the first bit of good news when we were trying this. So we always wanted to make sure that the distro that we downloaded was the same that was being offered by the Depin project. So I put this on a VM to start off with, and I wasn't actually expecting a whole lot. What I was expecting was sort of just the same generic install process for every Linux distribution. And right away, I was sort of blown away on how beautiful Depin looked. Now, I've always heard that Depin was elegant and beautiful, but I've never had to see it for myself. So the installer was very pretty, and just things that I wasn't expecting a Linux distro to do. Like, it picked up on the fact that I was running in a virtual machine, and it asked me, would you like to have effects turn on, or would you like to have effects turn off? And what do you want for a better experience? Would you rather have a smooth and delicate experience, or would you rather just enjoy good performance? Now, I sort of appreciated that. Now, my computer it's got high specs on it, so I just decided to take it for a run for its money and see what it was worth. In this VM, I put all available resources to it, and I decided to have all the effects on. So moving on, the first impressions were all great. It was all, you hear about how pretty Depin is. For a first-time user, this is going to be, first-time person coming to Linux, this is going to be probably a showcase for Linux. It is that good looking of an operating system. It's that pretty all the way around. Now, pretty only gets you so far as a lot of things that I like to do, but things like really high quality background wallpaper images all of them are really stunning images. You don't get this with some Linux distribution. You get it with a few, but not all. So as time went on, I started digging a little bit deeper into what it could do. And I went to the App Store, and I found that the App Store was really well laid out. Now, I didn't install a whole lot of software, but I decided to install some software that I was unfamiliar with, and I wanted to check out a few things. One of them was a typing program, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, like Tux Typing or something like that. I can't remember the name of the software off the top of my head, but I just wanted to download something different that I hadn't ever just installed before. It ran very smoothly on a VM. Nice little typing program. It brought me back to when I learned how to type on a keyboard. Very similar to any other typing program out there. Again, it's free, just like any other Linux software for the most part. As soon as I did that, I sort of had a thought, and I wanted to go research it a little bit, because I had heard things about Deepin Linux that before, certain things like updating were not stable, they weren't reliable, and I had heard recently that they had moved from like an Ubuntu-based distro to a Debian stable release. And so I wanted to check to see how their submissions to their App Store actually work. Now, one of the things that I came across is this quote on the Depin page that talks about what developers need to do to submit their apps. And this sort of made me feel a little bit better when it said, after becoming a packager of a certain app, when the source app is updated, the packager must package and update the app within the Depin store within 1 week. If there are 3 times of delays or an update is delayed more than 2 weeks, the packager will have no permission on the app any longer, and the subsequent donation will no longer belong to the packager. So what I got out of that is that they want their app store up to date. They don't want old packages. And if you're not going to provide new packages and new updates, you're no longer going to be participating in the app store. So I originally... I felt a lot better when reading that, and I think that will help when you're trying to download software. You're expecting the most up-to-date software that's stable, and so I think that's really great that they do that. And this could happen in other distros, and I'm sure it does, but this is kind of the first time that I looked into this. Now, going back to the App Store, the one thing that I did notice that I didn't quite like was that I could download any software that I wanted without typing in the root password. I'm not really sure why that is. Maybe it's just because it's set up on the administrator account. What I could have done is I could have set up a standard account and tried it there to see maybe would you need a administrator account there. But as far as like trying Deepin in an educational system, I would want there to be a password barrier there where students couldn't just install anything that they wanted to. So that was a concern of mine as doing this in an educational setting. I went on and I tried a few other things. I actually downloaded Tux Guitar, which is a guitar notation software where you can write out guitar tabs for guitar players. I didn't spend a whole lot of time there. Again, I was just downloading various random pieces of software. So as time went on, I tried out all of the features with Deepin Linux, and I tried it in every configuration that I could think of. And one of the things that I noticed being in a VM and that VM being under Linux, when I was in full screen mode, if I was in the center of the screen, trying to get to the dock, the Mac-like dock in the middle, I would often pull up the menu from Virtual Machine, from VirtualBox, and that sort of got in my way. So what I did is I ended up trying to move the dock over to the left or to the right or on top to see which would be the best setup for me as far as using this on a constant basis. And one thing that I found, in a lot of cases when I'm trying Linux distros, I'm not really happy if I move a menu bar around. The functionality seems to get weird for me, whether it's you're pulling up menus or other types of things that from their docs, and it just doesn't seem to work well with the workflow. But with Depin, I noticed that no matter where I put this doc, it worked really well, and it seemed like this was like second nature. It seemed normal for what happened to happen when it was pulling up the app launcher or whatever. Just the effects that follow when you click on things, everything seems normal. It doesn't seem like it's out of place. And I'm not sure I'm explaining this the right way, but other times when I've moved menus from top to bottom or left to right, you hit a button and it just doesn't look right when you do it. So Depin seems to have looked quite into this and making everything look very visually stunning. The other thing that I liked is the control panel. That's very similar to Windows 10. You bring up the control panel and a whole panel on the right-hand side comes out with every imaginable setting and configuration that you would need there. Just all around, they have pretty much thought of everything. I've toggled the dark mode on the file managers, and for me, I always enjoy dark mode on just about anything. And if I can use dark mode, it saves my eyes from so much agony. I've mentioned this before that I have a slight astigmatism in my eyes, and reading text for me sometimes is painful. And other than that, I see fine all day long, and I can see far, I can see close. But when it comes to actually working on computers, my eyes get tired very fast. So the dark mode really does save on my eyes. And it seemed to work just great. And you can select it on whatever window you want, rather than making it a global theme or something like that. So I really appreciated just having that option for the dark modes. So what are my thoughts on Depin as far as the security issues are concerned? I was a little concerned at first, and I went and I did some research, and the overall consensus is that a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me say there are no security issues that are of any concern that aren't similar on other Linux distros. So it's not something that you need to be concerned about just because it's made from a different part of the world with a different culture, that type of thing, and a different government running that particular country. So I'm trying not to put that sort of bias on Deepin Linux, and I really want to stress that right here, right now. So the idea is that many people have monitored network traffic. I found nothing within Deepin Linux that shouldn't be there. So it's not calling home to anybody. And that's something that could be dormant and could come to be at some point in time, but it's very unlikely that it's there. The source code for Depin is also available on GitHub. And many people I've read that a lot of people would say, what would quell these fears is for someone to do an independent source code study and go through the source code, audit it, and then tell everybody if they found security holes or flaws or whatever. And I don't really think that's necessary, but that would be something that, in the future, if an independent auditing company were to do, it would help Depin probably grow some users, I would imagine, because I know a lot of people out there, and I mentioned Depin, they get nervous about it. So I haven't found any reason to distrust Depin. There was a couple of things that I didn't like about it, like the admin password on the App Store, but everything else just worked. One of the things that I liked is they have their own built-in software for screenshots. They have their own built-in software for videos, for image viewing, for backing up your system. It has a Depin. You can actually back up your entire system using the Depin software. I thought that was great as well. On my system, I'm using TimeShift. I did not get a chance to try the Depin backup system, but I'm cool. It's cool that they're developing it on their own. So I was a lot more impressed with this than I expected to be, and it wasn't just because of how good looking the system is. It was because it seems like it's well thought out, and I think in the future that Depin should be something that other Linux distributions are looking at, that they are trying to sort of maybe mimic some of the higher quality things that Depin is doing that I'm not seeing in other Linux distros. And because now that I look at Depin, I've always been a GNOME user, and I've always really liked GNOME. But there are some things now that I like more about the Depin desktop. And I've read that you can install the Depin desktop environment on other Linux distributions, whether it's Ubuntu-based or Arch-based or what have you. I've asked a few people about it. I didn't want to install it on my system just yet because I didn't want to install those packages and have my system turn upside down on me for some reason. Not saying that it would do that, but I like my system and the setup that it has, and I actually let somebody borrow my test laptop. So I sort of don't have a test machine at the moment. So I know that distros like Manjaro have a Depin option for the Depin desktop, and I actually kind of want to check that out at some point in time. So that's my review on Deepin Linux. If you want to try it out, and if you've tried it, are you a Depin user and you want to let me know some of the great things about Depin, send me an email, mrptechreviews@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. You can also take a look at all the links in the show notes. Support Eric. You can also join the Discord chat room. And you can also check out all the other great shows over at the Podnuts Network. Go over to podnuts.com. Check out all the other shows there. Thanks to Door to Door Geek for supporting this show and for keeping me up and running week after week, all the hard work he does behind the scenes. And thanks everybody for listening. We will see you next time.